Hey everyone, hope you're doing well. So my 2020 Corvette C8 just came back from a trip and it came back with some damage. So in this video, I'm gonna go over exactly what the claims process was, what I got paid out from my Turo host protection plan, and how it all played out. We're gonna go take a look at the damage. Then I'm also gonna go over the things that you need to be really aware of so that you don't get jibbed when it comes to doing claims with Turo, and so that you get paid out in full, because I often hear this complaint and it's usually because of an error on the host end that you don't get the full payout on a claim. So I'll go over that. And towards the end of the video, I'm going to go over all the different insurance options through Turo so that you can make the best decision on what works for you. Now, we are getting into busy season for Turo, so that means inevitably there is going to be higher utilization of your cars. So the probability of damage happening to one of your Turo cars goes up naturally. Now, a lot of you guys have been asking and trying to figure out the lay of the land when it comes to the Turo business. You might want to check out my course or my private community. The details are down in the description below. Okay, so let's get into it. So let's go take a look at my C8 and the unfortunate damage that it came back with. This is the first time she's been hit, and luckily it isn't the worst thing in the world. So as we can see here, on the front right side of the splitter, it looks like it was scraped up. It probably hit a curb. Not surprising because this car does sit so low. Now, when damage like this happens, typically Turo is going to want you to provide photos with some sort of a ruler so that they can get the measurement of the damage to ensure that it is above 3 inches. Why does that matter? Because majority of the Turo host protection plans do require that the damage does have to be above that 3-inch mark to qualify for coverage. Yes, this is true. So in this scenario, my claims agent from Turo did in fact ask me to provide photos measuring out the damage so that they could make sure. Now, the good thing was, as you guys can see, that it does come in at about 6 inches, which meant that I was able to qualify for coverage for this type of damage. Now, I'm so glad that none of the damage was done to the actual body of the car. There was no issues with paint, because that would have been a lengthy process to get this Corvette repaired. It would have taken days off my calendar, and that would have been a bigger loss. So this luckily is a pretty quick replacement, and it should be smooth sailing to get this taken care of. So now let's go over exactly how the claim broke down. Now, first and foremost, when a car comes back and you notice damage, you need to make sure that you take very detailed photos, because if you don't have photos of it, how can you claim for it? So that's the number one thing. Take photos in order for you to claim for that damage. Now, the car came back, I saw the damage, took photos, and I immediately filed a claim with Turo, because the faster you get to it, the faster it all gets resolved. Lately, I've noticed that Turo has just been taking maybe a couple of days to resolve a claim from the time of filing to paying it out, and it's been great. Now, that's not always the case. That can change if their support teams are very busy, or if the damage is complicated, if there's other parties involved. There's a lot of factors that can go into this, but this was very straightforward, so the resolution was very, very quick. Now, for this particular car, I am on the 70% host protection plan. So that means Turo takes 30% of my day rate, and along with that, any claim that I file has a $250 deductible. So whatever the damage is, I'm responsible for the first $250. That's what that means. So let's take a look at this claim. You submit photos, your agent will get back to you with an estimate based on the photos that you sent in. So here is the estimate that I received from Turo, and this is exactly how it breaks down. Now, in this case, because the splitter is made out of that plasticky material, it's not really something that can be repaired. That piece of it actually needs to be replaced. And you can actually see that line item on the estimate that they provided me. It's indicated by, they have a little legend, and so you can actually really clearly tell if it's a replacement or if it's a repair. And in this case, the E indicates that this was a replacement OEM part from GM that came in at around $202 for the replacement. And then after that, if you look further down, they estimated the labor for this replacement part to be about 3 hours or so, coming in at $178, bringing my total to $396.53. Great, right? Except for the fact that I have a $250 deductible. Now, because the repair amount is above $250, that means Turo still has a balance that they owe me. So they will deduct the $250 from the total payout and give you the remaining balance, which in this case was $146.53. So now I want to talk about, what do you do in the event that you have a deductible? What are some of your options here? So as a host, that cost doesn't get passed down to you. Now I'll go over what I did in this situation. So what I did was I just sourced a cheaper part. It wasn't that difficult to do. I went into the Corvette forum, which is a great place. Forums are amazing places to purchase parts from. Oftentimes, especially with cars like the C8, people are modifying them. They're switching out parts to aftermarket parts. And so a lot of the OEM parts are available, and they're typically in great condition. And given that these cars are so new, I was able to find a handful of splitters that were available, and the price range on those splitters were about $75 to $85 shipped. So that was great, right? I actually fell below the amount that Turo paid out to me. Now, if I were to go and get it installed by somebody, I would probably end up paying about $150 in total for the parts and the labors, because it's a very easy thing to replace. However, for me personally, I'm going to turn this into a weekend project with my dad, and this is something him and I are going to tackle, which he doesn't know until he watches this video. Hi, Dad. We're going to work on this weekend. So that's sort of what I did to take care of this issue that I had and not have to come out of pocket for any deductible or really have to deal with that. Now, another thing that you can do is Turo gives you the option to resolve with your guest directly. So in that instance, let's say your car comes back with damage, right? And you have a rather large deductible that's maybe a couple of $1,000s because you're on one of the lower host protection plans that has a higher deductible, which I'll go over at the end of this video. Now, in that scenario, it is probably a good idea that you try to resolve with your guest directly and try to go through their insurance that they may have. Now, it doesn't always pan out. Not everyone has insurance. Not everyone is willing to work with you, but Turo does give you that option. If you go that route, you basically need to file the claim with Turo so that they have it documented that damage took place during this trip, but they give you an option that says resolve with your guest directly, and you want to select that. What that gives you is sort of an additional layer of protection. Turo will give you 20 days to try to get this resolved with your guest. If at some point in time you start getting the feel that, you know what, this person is ghosting me and they're becoming unresponsive and I'm not going to be able to collect from them, you can revert back to your Turo host protection and then follow through with the claim with Turo and have them resolve it for you and have them pay you out. So that is the second thing that you can do to avoid that. Now, why didn't I resolve with my guest directly in this situation? Well, for me, it was purely just a time thing. I'm so busy these days that I just didn't really want to put in the time to having to go back and forth with my guests and trying to go get an estimate, recoup the money, settle a payout. It's just not something I personally wanted to tackle. However, it's not that I haven't done it in the past. I have, and in the future, I will likely do it again. It's just in this moment in time, I'm so busy that I didn't have time for it. I knew it was small damage. I knew that this particular part, the cost wasn't very expensive, and that I would likely fare out well from the Turo payout and things were going to be okay. I've been doing this long enough to where I more or less know what certain damages are going to cost. And so I knew that this was going to be okay, and I just didn't want to deal with it and put my time into it. However, oftentimes, if you can deal directly with your renter's insurance company, you will fare out much better in the insurance claims process. You will avoid that deductible and you will likely come out on top getting the full amount for the repairs of your car, and it's not a very difficult process to go through. So that is another option that you can implement. And then finally, if you do have a deductible and it is the type of damage where you need to go to the shop and really get some repairs done that could take a week or 2 weeks, what you can also do is build a great relationship with your shop and really negotiate that price down, right? When it's a $250 deductible like I had, that's not a huge amount, and that's typically, if the damage is larger, something that you can negotiate with your shops, and so you can also cut costs there as well to you personally as a host. So those are some options. Okay, now this is a huge pitfall that I see people fall into, and there's a real sticker shock when people go to file a claim and the payout is not quite what you thought it was going to be, and you quickly realize that as a host there is going to be a significant out-of-pocket expense to you to get a car repaired. And that is when it comes to pre-existing damage on your vehicle. So let's go take a look at one of my cars. Now, if we look at this rim right here, right? I'm going to try to explain this to you guys in the most digestible way possible. And this is a very common example. So let's take a look at this rim. This rim has already some damage to it right here. No matter how big or small it is, there is some damage to this rim. If I took this rim to the shop today to go get it fixed, it would likely cost me, let's say, about $100. Now, let's say this car goes out on a trip and somebody totally curbs this rim and it comes back with maybe a 10-inch curb rash around the rim. That is quite significant, and it was definitely not there at the start of the trip. Now, as a host, you might be thinking, oh my gosh, this is a significant amount of damage to my rim, and obviously the guest did it because that wasn't there before, so I'm going to go and file a claim with my host protection plan. You go to file a claim, and the result that you're going to get from that is Turo is going to deny your claim. Why? Because there was already pre-existing damage to that car. Now, as a host, you might be thinking to yourself, well, okay, there's pre-existing damage, but it was so little. So this is significantly more. Why wouldn't my insurance, my host protection plan, cover that? And obviously the guest did it. Well, the reason for that is this. If you went and got your rim repaired prior to the renter damaging your rim, it would have cost you $100. If you went and got your rim repaired after the renter damaging your rim, that added on an additional 10 inches of damage, it's still going to cost you $100 because a rim repair is sort of a standard cost. So that is why Turo would deny your claim, because there was pre-existing damage where the cost would have been the same and you would have had to have paid that anyways to get that rim repaired. So it actually, in my opinion, makes total sense. Now, here's another one when it comes to prior damage that I see a lot of people get really surprised by. Let's take a look at this part of my car. Now you guys can see that some of the paint has been chipped off, right? I'm actually not really too sure how exactly this happened, but it did. And here we are today, and I have yet to get it fixed. It's something that I've been procrastinating on. Very easy to do as a Turo host running multiple cars. Well, the thing is that this is considered prior damage. Now, let's say my car goes out on a trip and somebody ends up my renter ends up rear-ending a third party and takes out my entire front bumper. Okay, the whole thing needs to be replaced and redone, and it's a huge mess. Well, I'm going to submit the claim to Turo, right? Turo is going to take a look at the condition of my car prior to the trip starting. And they're going to say, hey, Saimah, you had a little bit of damage on the right side of your bumper. Now, if you would have gone and repaired that damage prior to this trip starting, it would have cost you $250. Now, the entire replacement of this bumper, because your renter rear-ended somebody, is going to be $3,000. Well, because that part of the bumper was already damaged and you would have had to pay $250 for it anyways, we are going to deduct $250 from the total repair cost because that was pre-existing damage that you as a host were responsible for. So as your insurance provider, we are not going to provide you coverage on something that was already damaged. So that is how the Turo system works. Now this is, small peanuts, not a big deal, couple $100. Okay, fair. But the thing is, if you have damage that is more significant, like maybe something that is really dented, the corner of a bumper that's really scratched up and needs paint work and dent removal, these things can really add up. And before you know it, you go to file a claim and, you could be short $1,500. You could be short $2,000 because of this pre-existing damage. So the lesson here is that you really have to maintain your cars well, especially, I see people make this mistake all the time. If a renter causes damage, you file the claim and you get the payout for that claim. And then you decide, I'm just going to pocket this money and I'm not going to get the car repaired. Well, eventually that is going to catch up to you because the next time around your car gets damaged in that same area, which it always happens, you go to file that claim, you're eventually going to lose out at some point. So it's very, very important that whenever damage is done to your cars, that you make sure you get them fully repaired. If you did the damage yourself, gotta get it repaired because you are gonna end up paying for it one way or another eventually. This is really a note to myself as well because I've been so procrastinating on getting that bumper repaired. I gotta get it done before I end up paying for it later, and it'll probably be with a bit of a markup if Turo is putting out that estimate. So very, very important. And finally, let me go over the different host protection plans because so many of you guys are getting started, and this is super important to really take some time out, sit down, and really think about what you can afford and what makes the most mathematical sense for you, because it's different for every single person. Every single car is completely different, and you can have different cars on different protection plans. You don't have to have the same protection plan for every single car. So Turo offers 5 protection plans, and there are some differences, but mainly I'm going to go over the deductibles and the revenue split. The first one is the 85% plan, which means you give Turo 15% of your day rate and you keep 85%. With that comes a $2,500 deductible, quite high. Then next you have the 80% plan where you split 20% of the profits with Turo, and that deductible is $1,625. Then you have the 75-25 plan, deductible is $750. And then you have the 70% plan, which I'm on for my C8, and that has a $250 deductible. And then finally, the 5th plan is the 60% plan where you give Turo a whopping 40%, but you have 0 deductible, and that covers wear and tear. So meaning that 3-inch rule doesn't really apply. I am going to put the link to Turo's host protection plans and all the details that they offer for them in my description down below so that you can really thoroughly go through it. For me personally, people ask me all the time, how do you do insurance? What plans do you choose? For me personally, this is something that is very dynamic for me. I'm constantly looking at the numbers to see what makes the most sense. Now in peak season, I tend to make so much more money that paying less to Turo in revenue split and earning more on my day rates would actually, for some cars, offset any deductibles I might have to pay out. So that's how I sort of look at my reward to risk, right? It changes through the seasons for me and the cars that I have. Now, when it gets slow, let's say in the winter, for example, then I like to increase my host protection plan because I don't want to take on the risk of having very high deductibles should my car go out on a rental that is not really yielding me a lot of profit. And then on top of that, I have increased risk because I have a high deductible. So that's personally how I go about it. I'm really curious to know how you guys go about it and what host protection plan you guys are on. But I was really compelled to make this video today because we are in that peak season and we're going to go even further into it, meaning that more of you guys are really going to experience these scenarios where damage does happen. It's inevitably, me and this word are not getting together today. It's a part of the business. So it's something that you really have to be aware of and you want to be prepared for should that happen. Now, talking about damages and insurance, and there's so much to it. It's very detail oriented, and there's a lot of different ways to go about it. This is something that is discussed heavily in my community. So if you guys are interested in joining, just take a look at the description down below. The links are in there, and I would love to have you. You can chat with me one-on-one as well. And it's actually really fun. I do 2 live calls every single week, and we just go over all the different things going on with Turo, pricing strategies, damages, so on and so on. So it's a lot of fun and some really great hosts that are part of that community. All right, you guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that you guys have found this helpful, and hopefully this really helps you guys out should you find yourself in one of these situations like I did. But this is a real life example of how it does play out. Thank you for tuning in. If you like this video, be sure to hit that like button. Once again, my name is Saimah. This is Saimah's Experience. And if you like this channel, be sure to show your support and your love by hitting that subscribe button. Take care, guys. Mwah.